Good morning, everybody, and I'm really excited to be recording this masterclass today for you all with Simon Bartholomew from the British Franchise Association, and he's going to talk to us all about franchising, funnily enough, and how we can make it work for our businesses. So welcome, Simon, really nice to see you.
Good morning, and thank you very much for inviting me.
That's okay. So let's start off straight away. Can you tell us a little bit about the BFA and what you guys do?
Yeah, I can. The BFA, we are known as the British Franchise Association, and we're a leading trade association that represents the franchise industry in the UK. We're here to empower people to make a positive impact on what they do in business. And our mission is really to provide an educational space and accreditations that are governed by our high standards and ethics to make sure that franchising is done in an ethical way that protects both franchisors and franchisees as they develop their businesses and grow in the franchise sector. And we want to establish ourselves as the hub for everything franchising in the UK, which is basically what the BFA is there for, to support and represent the industry as we move forward.
So you represent franchisors and their franchisees then, effectively?
That's right. Our membership consists of a number of categories. We have franchisor members, obviously, who are our accredited franchisor brands that offer a franchise business in the UK. We also have a membership category of franchisees because our high standards and our ethics mean that we want to represent the whole industry, and we want people to talk together in a collaborative way. Because I've always said as a member of the industry that when franchisors and franchisees work together, there is no stronger business model. And that's the key to it, is them working together. We also have two other categories of membership. We have supplier members, who are people that supply goods and services to the franchise industry. And we also have advisor members who are legal or insurance or consultancy members.
Okay, so a whole community around the franchise. Okay, fantastic. Thank you. So tell me, I've got a question here, which is, what does it actually mean to franchise a business? What's, whether that's a legal definition or the actual reality of what it means?
Okay, franchising is there is no legal definition. It's an unregulated industry in the UK, and that's why the BFA is here to put ethics and standards within it. So we are an accreditation association. So to become a member, you have to prove to us that your business meets our standards and our ethics. But basically, franchising is where somebody has developed a business model that is successful, and then they franchise out the business system and the brand name to another investor who then runs their own businesses, but with the support of the franchisor. So it's a method for people to be in business for themselves, but not on their own.
Okay. And I assume within that there are sort of different ways of doing it in terms of how much support is offered, how much is done centrally. Is there a set way of doing it, or are there variations?
Under the BFA, we tend to educate people, and we tend to promote a standard system of support and help and standards within the franchise agreement. There are, as I say, it's not a regulated industry, so there are franchisors out there that may not use the same code of ethics and the same standards that the BFA represents, who wouldn't be members. So it's there are general principles that are followed by everybody, but it's the standards and the ethics of the BFA that we represent that we believe makes our members stand out from others.
Okay, thank you. And why is it a good option for expanding a business? I know that, when people want to expand, it's something that a lot of business owners consider.
Traditionally, it's always been said that franchising is a really good way of expanding a business, because you can expand the business using other people's capital, because you're not investing and building a different branch. You're allowing somebody else to use your brand name and your system to build a branch or a unit in another territory. using your system and expanding your brand, but they are investing in the business. Of course, they're taking the lion's share of that profit because it's their investment in it, but it allows you to build that brand without having to control it. Personally, I think it's more than that, because I think when you expand a brand or a business through franchising, what you're doing is you're getting an investor or a business person that has skin in the game. So they're not just an employee. As I said earlier, I think franchising, when franchisors and franchisees work together, is a really strong business model, because the people running the businesses for you are invested in the business, so they will tell you as it is. Employees will sometimes tell you what you want to hear, whereas when it's a franchise business, they will tell you as it is. And I think it's people often ask me about the difference between managing franchisees and employees. Franchisees will only do what you ask them to do or what you direct them to do if you can sell them on the fact that it's the right thing to do, because it's their money and it's their business. So they won't just follow you willy-nilly if you can't convince them it's the right thing to do. So it makes the business a lot stronger. And you've also got franchisees who are invested in the business that will advise you and tell you when things are going wrong. And most franchise brands, the innovation comes from franchisees when those franchisees work closely with the franchisor to do it. And for a franchisee, they can learn from all the mistakes that people before them have made. So, you know, they don't have to make all those mistakes on their own because of the support they get from the franchisor.
So I like that sort of point of, you know, it's great. Obviously, part of franchising is you've got a good system to pass on, but the fact that your franchisees, because it's their business, can then feed back and innovate themselves. That's a really useful part of not just growing the business, but developing it, isn't it?
That's right. And most people that invest in a business, I mean, franchising, there is a slight contradiction in it, because what you're looking for is an entrepreneur that wants to run their own business. But you're also wanting someone that will follow the system and keep to your brand guidelines. And that's why the franchise agreement, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, becomes an important part. It can, in some franchisees' views, be very restrictive, because it's very restrictive on what they can and can't do with the brand. But that's what you need as a franchisor. And on the other side, from a franchisee's point of view, that's what they want, because they need the businesses to be consistent and to be following that brand. If you're going to invest in a brand, you need the public to understand what that brand represents and know what they're going to get within that brand. That's why brands are successful. So you can't have every franchisee going off on complete tangents. But a good franchise system will allow a franchisee to come back to the franchisor, make suggestions, and work with them to develop good ideas within that system.
Yeah, so hopefully it then gets rolled out to all of it. I suppose obviously right. One of the most well-known franchises, it was McDonald's, wasn't it? And you know exactly what kind of burger you're going to get in every McDonald's, whether you like it or not. It's always the same one, isn't it? And that's the consistency thing, isn't it?
Yeah, McDonald's, you know, if you look at what McDonald's was in the 1950s and what now, it's developed and it's changed a lot over time. And a lot of those innovations and changes have been led by the franchisees within McDonald's. But although it's changed over time, when you go into a McDonald's restaurant, you know what you're going to get. You know what the menu is going to be like. You know what the pricing structure and everything is going to be. So you know before you enter the restaurant what it's going to be. And that's the value of a brand. And that's the value of being part of a franchise brand rather than going out on your own.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, thank you. So if I was, if I'm a cleaning business owner and I'm thinking, right, okay, a franchising could be right for me, what are the first steps that I need to think about or to take?
Well, first of all, you've got to make sure you've got a business that works, and you have to have a system that is replicatable, so that you can actually replicate it with somebody else, that you can train somebody else to do it. And that you have something to offer the franchisee. Now, that will be a business system, it may be a brand name, or it may be something unique in the way you manage your customers. Once you've got that, you need to make sure you have legal agreements in place, and you need to make sure you've got a support structure. most importantly, you have to make sure that you have the finance available to do it. First of all, to go out and run a pilot. But taking one step back and going into the first step, in my view, would be to contact the BFA and do one of our seminars on how to franchise your business. It's far easier to get all the research done and talk to the right people before you franchise your business and get it right from the start, and make all the common mistakes that people do that become very expensive to undo later and become very difficult to manage. So getting all the research and getting all the advice you can get first is the important place, and the BFA website is a great place to start.
And I know when we originally spoke, I know that you're very keen to help businesses do it right from the start. That's part of your ethos, isn't it? Rather than, it's not just about established franchises, it's about nurturing people from the idea, I suppose, onwards.
That's right. I mean, as a standards-based association, we look for members that are fitting within our standards and our code of ethics, and that's important to us. But it's also important to us that the sector is led by those ethics. So we very much encourage people that are coming into franchising or thinking of coming into franchising to talk to us, and we will work with them. To be honest, in 40 years of business, I've never found an industry that is more collaborative and more helpful, where franchisors help each other. And through the association, there's a lot of guidance and advice people can get when they're coming into the sector to make sure they do it right. So yes, it doesn't matter if someone's not franchising yet. It doesn't matter if they've just started franchising, but they don't think they're doing it right. We would like to talk to them, and we would like to help them get it right, so that when they are ready to join in membership, then they're there. The last thing we want to do is then talk to members and then get them to redo agreements and redo manuals because they haven't done it right in the first place. So we work very much on the principle, let us give you the guidance, let us tell you how to get it right first, learn from the mistakes that we've seen happen, and then you're in a good position to join us once you've got your pilot up and running and you're ready to franchise your business.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. And are there some hard and fast rules around a business and how it's set up to sort of be ready for franchising? Because I know it's not you're not just licensing your name, are you? It's everything about the business that you need to be passing on.
Yeah, you need to make sure that your business, the business is run and the way it can happen isn't just you as the business owner. Is it something that is scalable? Is it something you can train somebody else to do? And to do that, you're going to need several things in place. You're going to need a very clear business system that you can train. And the starting point of that is having an operations manual. At the end of the day, you're selling a franchisee a business system. If you can't write that business system down, then what is it you're actually selling those people to do? So an operations manual of how the business operates is the keystone to start with. And then following that, you need a very good franchise agreement. And then you need a clear way of how you're going to recruit franchisees and how you're going to sell your system to get franchisees on board, and then how you're going to support them as they move forward. And that's the bit that franchise people entering the franchise industry tend to underestimate, is the amount of support they're going to give to the new franchisee. And that's one of the important things to think about, is if your business is going to be scalable, if you're running a cleaning business in your town and you're running that very hands-on and operating it, then it can be very attractive to actually, well, I could sell a franchise in a neighboring town where somebody else can run a business. But how are you actually going to support them without your existing business falling down? If you're working 7 days a week in your business, have you got the time to go out and support? So you need to look at how your business will run. Do you need to bring managers in to manage your business so that you've got the time to support your franchisees? Because you're taking money from them to help them run their business. So you've got to make sure they're supported. You've got to make sure they're successful. The worst thing that any franchisor can do when they come into the market is take on new franchisees and not support them and see them fail. Because if your first franchisees don't succeed, then you're not going to build the brand that you want. So there's a fair amount of investment that you need to put in that. You have to be clear that it's not a cheap way of running a business. You have to invest time and money in getting it right. But if you do get it right, then you're onto a winner.
So that was actually going to be my next question. Is it expensive to do this? I mean, and probably more expensive in terms of time than it is in terms of money, but is it an expensive route
Yeah, people often ask me how much does it cost to franchise a business, and really, it's like asking how long is a piece of string. It depends on the business, and it depends on what's already in place. So, if you've got to start writing operations manuals, you're going to have to write a franchise agreement. So you're going to have to get lawyers to do that. And if you're going to go into franchising, one of the biggest advices we'll give you is to use a franchise lawyer rather than just go out and use a template franchise agreement, because that's where you're going to get it wrong. So you need to make sure you're dealing with the right advisors to get it right. People always push for the amount of money, and I'm reluctant to give it because it depends very much on the business. But you're going to look at a minimum of 25,000 and probably more than that to franchise your business and to get it up and running and franchised properly.
Yeah, no, that's a good sort of guide, isn't it, for people to sort of look at. So you've touched on the legals there, and obviously, that there needs to be a legal agreement in place. So what's the agreement called? Is it just simply called a franchise agreement or a license agreement? What sort of agreement is it?
Yeah, no, it's called a franchise agreement. Franchising and licensing are two different types of business models. So it is a franchise agreement. The franchise agreements that we accredit are guided by the European Code of Ethics. And some extra bits that we put in as the BFA to make sure that it's fair. The franchise agreement is there as a contract between you and the franchisee to make sure everybody understands their responsibilities and what they're going to do. From a franchisor's point of view, that franchise agreement will make sure that the franchisee understands what they're going to pay for the system and what their ongoing fees are. It's going to control how much money they put into marketing and how they operate the business. So it's very much about making sure they operate the business according to the brand guidelines and operate it correctly. And it will then give the franchisor protection of what happens if it doesn't go to plan, what support they're going to do, how to make sure the franchisee operates the business correctly, and what you can do if they can't. And it also protects the investment, because if you're going to franchise your business up front, you're going to do a fair amount of investment in recruiting and supporting and training that new franchisee. So you need some kind of protection to make sure that they're going to operate that business for a period of time for you to get the return on that investment. And it's also going to put in some protections there, because one of the most important things you do as a franchisor is you give all your business know-how to a prospective franchisee. So the last thing you want to do is do all that and then see them pack up and go off and use all that know-how to run a business in competition with you. So in a franchise agreement, there will be non-compete clauses to make sure that you protect your know-how and that the franchisee uses that know-how to develop your brand, not to do something else on their own.
And presumably the advisors within your community, that's their role in how the BFA works.
That's right. And the franchise lawyers that we recommend that are affiliated and are advisor members of the BFA will all produce franchise agreements according to the Code of Ethics. So if they produce a franchise agreement for you, you can be confident that that would be sufficient in terms of the legal agreement to get you into membership of the BFA.
Okay. And what sort of mistakes do new franchisors make, and how can we avoid making them?
Okay, there's three common mistakes when people want to start franchising their business. One is that they underestimate the time and the cost it's going to be to get the franchise business up and running. Secondly, the second one is that they don't have a correct franchise agreement to give them the protections they need before they start training and giving away their important know-how. And thirdly, and probably the biggest mistake, is they take on the wrong franchisees to start with. And when you've invested in growing a business and putting everything in place to go out and support franchisees, to train them and to hire them, and then somebody comes along that's very enthusiastic about opening your business and buying a franchise off you, it's you can get carried away and want to sell it. But it's very important to, people often ask me is when you sell a franchise, are you selling a franchise or are you recruiting a franchisee? And I've always said, I think there's two distinct parts of that. If you want to recruit franchisees, you have to do a sales job first. Unless you're a well-known brand like McDonald's, then people may not have heard of you. So you've got to go out and tell them why they need to buy a franchise from you and what the benefits of that are. So there is a certain amount of sales process. And things like discovery days and meetings with them is a part of that sales process. When I was a franchisor, I always used to say to my prospective franchisees at one point, right, now we've finished the sales process and you have decided you want to become a franchisee. Now's the time when we change this to recruitment, and you've got to sell yourself to me so that I believe that you're the right person to run my brand and run my business. And then I want to see business plans. I want to see what your plans are and how you're going to invest in the business, how you're going to grow the business, what sort of time you're going to put into the business, and how you're going to work within that business to make sure that the business, operates according to my brand and my values. And that's really important to make sure you get that first franchisee, because people will tell you that the first 5 franchisees will dictate how successful you're going to be as a franchisor in the long term.
And I suppose you put so much time and investment into the first couple of years. You need to know that the people that you're taking on are on board with where the business is going to go after that, because that's probably where the money actually comes back to you, isn't it?
It is. And, you want the ongoing fees. So you want your franchisees to grow. But more importantly than that, you need them to grow quickly and to be successful, because, when you're selling your first franchise, then the people that you're selling it to are slightly different because they're early investors. They understand that you've been successful, but they haven't. But once you've got 4 or 5 franchisees, then the prospective franchisees that come after that will want to talk to those franchisees, will want to see how successful they are. And if they're not successful, then why are they going to be successful? So how well those first franchisees do will dictate how well you recruit and how fast you grow in the future. So the better the standard of your first 5 or 6 franchisees are better. Let's not pretend. No franchisor is ever going to have 100% success rate. Franchisees will come in. Things will go wrong. Things may go wrong with their health. Things may go wrong in their personal life, or they may just not be the person that you thought they were, and they may decide that this business isn't for them, and they don't devote the time and the effort to build that business. So sometimes you are going to get a franchisee who it doesn't work for. If that's in your first few, then that is more difficult. Let's try and get the first 5 or 6 franchisees successful first before you get that one that doesn't work. If it's the first 1 or 2 that don't work, then you're in trouble right from the start.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And so is the cleaning industry a good sort of base for franchising? Does it, in your experience, does it work?
Yeah, we have franchisors in membership in all sorts of areas in the cleaning industry. So we have really big industrial office cleaning businesses that look after major retail units. We have small domestic cleaners that will go out and clean people's houses. So it's a really good business to franchise because it is a very scalable business model. And with a brand behind you and the sorts of benefits that a franchisor can bring in terms of group rates on insurance, CPD, all the disclosures and the protections that you're going to need as a business, then those sorts of things can be there from the start and help you stop making a mistake. And probably the most important thing from a cleaning business is that people that go off and do it on their own, and I'm not an expert in the cleaning industry, so certainly your members are probably far better informed than me about it. But from standing from outside, a lot of people that start on their own, we'll start off going cleaning. Certainly, if we're talking domestic cleaning, or perhaps even office cleaning, people will go out and they will do it themselves. Then they'll hire one or two people themselves and they'll go out. But the scalability of that is very restricted and very slow. Whereas with a franchise, then that will already be put in place. So the business know-how will be about how you start and how you start scaling your business quickly and growing it really quickly.
I suppose in cleaning, we're kind of a bit restricted by our geography usually, especially domestic cleaning. We're restricted by our geography. So franchising is a way of widening the geography as well, isn't it? I suppose, and covering a wider area.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm guessing you would operate within a territory, whether that be one town or half a county or whatever. You will operate within that territory, and part of franchising would be to work with a consultant that will map out the territories and what you need, how many households you need, and where the territories should be. And then once you've got those territories in place, to manage one territory is a difficult job. To then trying to manage the next territory as well, and then another territory further away, becomes very difficult. Whereas if you franchise that business, so the next territory is owned by another business investor using your know-how, then other than supporting them, you allow them to grow it and build a local business. And that's the key, is that although a franchise business is a national brand, they are local businesses. So they're local investors, local businessmen, and everything that being a local business brings to a brand is still there, even though they're supported by the national brand. But it's much easier to scale when you've got investors and people running their own business rather than managers in each territory. If you operate one territory in say Cheshire, and then you open up another territory in Lancashire and you own that, and you've got a manager running Lancashire, what happens if that manager gets offered another job and leaves? So then how do you manage that business? Whereas if it's a franchisee that's invested, they signed a franchise agreement for 5 years or for 10 years, then you know that they're in place there. Then they can't just decide to take another job and go. They'd have to sell the business before they could leave. So you have that sort of protection, and it's much easier for you to manage and control those territories in that way.
I think, as you said earlier on, it's sort of them having skin in the game, isn't it? And they've got responsibility for the business as well as you.
That's right. And, there's this idea of skin in the game has always been something people talk about, and that's because people think much more about running a business and buying into a business and running their own business than they do about buying a job or taking on a new job. Because if you take on a new job and you find it's not the right thing for you, then you can always look for another job and you can resign and you can leave. But it's not quite the same when you're in business. So people tend to be much more loyal, maybe not the right word, but they tend to be there much more for the long term than employees.
Yeah, more committed, I suppose.
Yeah, that's a better word. Yeah.
So it seems like it's not just about the brand; it's about the systems and that operations manual, and I'll often sort of train people on systems. One of the things that I say is, that if you want your business to be saleable, scalable, and potentially franchisable, then you can't be working 60 hours a week like a lunatic, because nobody's going to buy that. So you need those systems, don't you? And probably a bigger team in place, do you think, in the original business to prove the model, or what do you think?
I think if you're going to be successful as a franchisor, you have to have a bigger team in the original business, because you've got to be free to go out and do your recruitment. Unless you're going to outsource that, you need to be able to go out and do your recruitment, talk to prospective franchisees, train those franchisees, and then support them. And if you're trying to still run 60 hours a week in your own business, then when are you going to fit that in? So yes, you probably need a better team in there to make the franchise work. And it's about having those systems, and it's if you're looking at domestic cleaning, it's not just those systems about how you're going to clean a house, or how you're going to recruit staff. It's all of that. It's how you're going to clean, how you're going to recruit your staff, what checks you're going to do on your staff, how you're going to control keys, how you're going to control access, how are you going to market the business, how are you going to find customers, how are you going to control how the quality of the cleaning, who's going to do the checks, the audits, who's going to make sure the staff are cleaning properly. all of those, who's going to talk to the customers, how are you going to invoice, how are you going to collect the money, all of
So many
those
moving
systems.
parts. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not just about the cleaning of the business, it's about managing the business and how you're going to grow and how you're going to develop over time, and putting that business plan in place for your franchisees. It may be that you're going to look at franchisees that will have more than one territory. So how are they going to grow that? And at what stage are they going to take on more staff? And at what stage are they going to take on more investment?
So I think I know the answer to this question because you mentioned it early on. But so the BFA, how can you help our members or people, if we're listening to the podcast, other cleaning business owners out there in the UK? How can you help them take the first steps?
Okay, well, the first step is go onto our website and register for one of the Franchise Your Business seminars to find out how to manage it. And coming along to one of those seminars, you'll get exposure to consultants, you'll get exposure to the lawyers who will tell you they're not there to sell services. What they're there to do is talk about what they can do to help people and what they recommend people need to look at to grow their business. So that's the first stage. The second stage is come along to our power hours, which we hold every month, which you'll find details on the website, where you can ask questions about franchising, talk to the people involved in franchising, talk to our members, and find out from them. I said right from the start, one of the things that I liked about the franchise industry is how collaborative it is and how people will help. And franchisors world over are keen to make sure other franchisors succeed, so that you'll be surprised how much advice they can give. And as you join the BFA, once you've got your franchise up and running and you become a member, and you come to our collaboration stations and you come to our networking events and you come to our awards and things like that, you'll begin to learn just how collaborative people are and how much help you can get in growing and scaling your business in the franchise sector from other franchisors that have been there, they've done it, they've made the mistakes. They're still making the mistakes, but they'll tell you how to avoid them.
Yeah, and that's the same with any community, isn't it? We find that in the DCBN. You don't need to make the same mistakes I did. I can share with you the mistakes I made and how I would do it differently and what works and what doesn't. And the whole community does that with each other. And it's probably the power of any community, isn't it? Is that learning from each other.
That's right.
Yeah, we all get there faster together. Okay, so that's the end of my questions. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Simon?
No, I think it would be great to talk to some of your members, and it would be great to see, to help them get their business growing and scalable and developing international brands rather than just small local businesses. And as I say, if they go on the BFA website, there's all sorts of resources there. Get on one of our seminars for how to franchise your business. Contact me. They can get my details from you, or if they've got a pen now, it's Simon Bartholomew at thebfa.org. Contact me, and if I can't help, I'll put them in touch with someone that can. But it's a great business. It can be one of the most frustrating ways of running business, but it can also be one of the most rewarding. And actually, when you help somebody else open their own business, even though it's using your brand, when you see them succeed and fulfill their life's dream to work for themselves, it's one of the most rewarding things that you can do in business. And I'd recommend franchising to anybody that wants to scale their business and grow, and to help other people get into business as well. It's really rewarding. And come and talk to us.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. You can really see the knowledge within the BFA from you just shines out, and obviously your passion for franchising as well. So thank you so much for sharing that, kind of a bit of an intro really as to what we need to know to get started, and really, really useful. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.